Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith. Welcome back. This is Sundance 2019, and we're talking to the folks from Lorena. Give it up for them, ladies and gentlemen. We just had a conversation right before we started. We have met once before.
I was 18 years old. I had just moved to LA from New Jersey, about 25 minutes from Red Bank. And so
crazy.
Younger Kevin Smith and younger me had an interaction, and he could not have been cooler.
I was so worried because when you were telling me the story, I'm like, oh God, was younger me a dick? And I wasn't. Like, it was kind. It was very, very cool. Thank you for that, man. I just came from recently Swift Current. I went to do a show there.
Oh, your hockey movie.
Well, no, I just went to do a show there, but
okay.
like a stand-up show.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah,
I was
gotcha.
there, but it like, of course, I know the documentary because I'm a big hockey fan.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it seems that you're building a career out of telling stories about people who've been disenfranchised or abused. Why are you leaning toward that?
I mean, I have a therapist, so I think I know a little bit about this.
Right.
I mean, I'm the son of immigrants who landed in Brooklyn, you know, and I grew up just hearing the stories of struggles that my parents and their families had. I was one of those lucky kids who escaped my childhood without any sort of abuse. But the older I got, and as I started making films that dealt with abuse, it seemed everybody I know, whether it's the guys on my hockey team, the women who I'm in a relationships with, they're all disclosing the sexual abuse that they had suffered to me. And it's just become this thing that I realize is everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I guess I've become obsessed with telling these stories.
What made you think of Lorena's story? Which, to be fair, we should say it's playing up here at Sundance. It's 4 parts.
Yep.
Long story. They're showing up here in its entirety, which is in a section where they've shown stuff like the OJ doc, the Jinx. It's become a very well-known section.
Right.
How does one come to the conclusion? Because how old were you when this story happened? Were you even alive at this point?
I was 11.
11 years old.
Yeah.
So you knew it. It was in the air.
What I knew is what everybody else knows when you mention, you know, whatever this figment of people's imagination is, Lorena Bobbitt, which is some crazed middle-aged white woman cut her husband's penis off in a fit of vengeance, threw it out the car window, right? That's what I grew up sort of with as common knowledge. December 22nd, 2016, I'm at the gym, not exercising. I'm scrolling through Facebook, and I see this Huffington Post headline that says, Lorena Bobbitt is done being your punchline. And then underneath it says something to the effect of how we as a society missed an opportunity to have a conversation about domestic violence, and instead it turned into a series of dick jokes. And it's by this great journalist named Melissa Jeltsin. And I go home, I go down the rabbit hole. I'm seeing that this story, Lorena's story, would have been local folklore in Manassas, Virginia, if it happened 10 years earlier. But it happened June 23rd, 1993, and it coincided with the birth of the 24-hour news cycle. And so it explodes. But all anybody can focus on is the cut-off penis. And for whatever reason, this human being who is literally on the stand during her trial, detailing the worst horrors anybody could possibly experience, having a panic attack on the stand, clearly. It's like nobody saw it, nobody gave a shit, and so I was like, I have to do this, you know. And so I emailed Lorena, and that kind of got us rolling.
When you dive into it, I'm sure you're thinking, there's definitely a documentary here. When did you realize it's sprawling and I could keep going and there's so much more than the superficial story?
A couple months in. My producing partner, Steven Berger, and a co-EP on this, Andrea Harner, the 3 of us just holed up in our living rooms in this, you know, little makeshift office that we had in LA. And as we're trying to break the story and sort of figure out what it is, and as Lorena's telling me more and more, it was clear that there's a lot to tell, you know.
I talked to so many people up here over the last few years, and lots of them talk about representation and into their work they're representing. And you represent yourself. You're up here in a movie where you're you and telling your story. And from what I recall from the news cycle back then, that wasn't something that happened. You didn't get to tell your own story last time.
That's correct. Unfortunately, you're right. I mean, what was the sense of people, it seems like, very unsensitive about domestic violence. And they miss the media, and society basically miss the opportunity to talk about this, social epidemic, basically, and which it is, sexual abuse, marital rape, and domestic violence. So the jokes and everybody was concentrating basically, and my ex-husband's genders instead of what happened. The actually essence of why instead of the act.
You were relatively new to the country at that point as well?
Yes, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Ecuador, grew up in Venezuela, and I was basically, my parents were in Venezuela. My immediate family was still in Venezuela, so I was alone. I felt really, by myself, and I basically not only suffer the abuse that my husband inflicted on me, but I was actually abused by the media, and I felt it hurt. I mean, I was so lonely, and moralistically, I was very depressed. So it was really difficult times.
It's just so, like, when you, oh my God, it's heartbreaking. Why now? Why after 25 years? Was it because you reached out to, or you felt like, you know what, like, the stories behind me?
Yeah, I have a lot of people that came to me with telling me, I wanted to do the story about you, and I wanted to tell, but basically I was not really inspired because, again, it seems like people forget what we really are here for. These are very, brutal criminal actions, that needs to be heard. I mean, I have a voice. And so one of the reasons why I did this documentary was because with Joshua and Jordan Peele in Amazon was because Joshua approached me and sent me emails, and still I couldn't say yes yet, because to me, I have to put myself again into the media, and so I have to talk. It was a long conversations between my husband or my partner, and for over 20 years, by the way, my boo. I'm not married. I don't know. I can't say boyfriend because it's odd.
20 years
After
in,
20,
a
right?
little more than a boyfriend.
Yeah. So I was like, and I have conversations with my parents about it, and I said, wow, and the turning point of this was because as a woman, I felt the energy to tell my story again. I felt empowered by the Me Too movement, and also because I'm a mother, and I'm a mother of a beautiful, teenager, of course, and so to me meant a lot. And the way how I wanted to also point that out was because, I wanted to see how the effect of this by telling from the point of view of a man. Because to me, it's very important to men to be included in these situations, in these social issues about domestic violence and marital rape. And to me, that was the turning point to include men in this story that I was going to tell. So that was very, very important for me.
It's weird. It's just in sitting here and talking to you, I realized that like someone new to the country, like the country failed you on every level. Like not only
the justice system, I felt that it was wrong at that time. But then again, I felt that the jury did what they supposed to do because that was what it was presented to them. It was only presented to go back like 5 days. In fact, it was 5 days in his trial. And then, so they couldn't do much. And, to send me, after all, to a psychiatry, to be evaluated by a psychiatry doctors in St. Petersburg in Virginia. So that to me was like, oh, wait a minute, I was acquitted by temporary reasonable of insanity. And then I was supposed to go back to the door that I came in, and I wasn't. I was taking it to the back door. So that was a little confusing to me. In fact, I turned to my attorney and I asked her, I said, is this good? What's going on here? Because I didn't understand. I wasn't provided with a person who does an interpretation or translation, and so I couldn't understand. And then my attorney said, yes, it's good. But then again, in my mind, I wasn't walking from the freedom door. I was going to another door. So I was like, what was going on? So it was very confusing.
It's confusing. It's heartbreaking too, because like every step of the way, the relationship with the American guy, the American justice system, then the American media piles on, and it must have just felt like, what a cruel nation, and yet you chose to still live here and forgave this.
It was really odd, but he does not, and he didn't define who I am. And as a matter of fact, you know, I still, you know, thinking this is happening, you know, and I felt at that time, I felt alone, that I thought it only happened to me. But then when I found out that millions and millions of women, you know, and actually men too, but we talk about women because statistically, you know, happened more to women. So I felt alone. I really felt, you know, again, there's no education. I wasn't, you know, I didn't know where to go to any resources. Now we have resources. You know, we can actually use the internet for that too. But at that time, I didn't feel that I knew much about it, what to do, or where to escape. You know, now these days, and this is the goal, you know, to educate people. And I'm working, you know, I have my own foundation, Lorena Gallo Foundation. I work, you know, through the Lorena Foundation to make more awareness against domestic violence and sexual assault. So now things have changed. It has been 25 years, and we have seen differences in the justice system, but still a lot of gaps that need to be closed. And this is one of the goals to make the documentary, actually, to make more aware of domestic violence and sexual assault.
This was the beginning, they say, of the 24-hour news cycle. The case put Court TV on the map, doubled their ratings and whatnot, and became coverage, standard coverage. When something out of the ordinary happens, millions of trucks go in. What would be different about your case now, do you think? Would it be handled differently now?
Yes, I definitely believe that, because now society have become to understand the critical and traumatic place that a victim is, and a survivor too. So society has actually grown to be more sensitive about this social epidemics. And I think that if it wouldn't happen today, or this, you know, in this millennial years, I think that my ex-husband would have had a conviction. Absolutely, yes. And
probably we would have heard far more about your side of the story. As this was all going on, and you watched the press create a narrative about you, was there ever like, what does that feel like? You want to pick up a phone and be like, that's not true, let me tell you the truth? Or
there was so much emotion involved, and I couldn't read any newspapers or tabloids, because that's what they wanted to sell, lurid stories and not the truth, right? That's what was selling. And I couldn't even watch the TV or nothing, because it was tormenting. And here I am, you know, being abused, like we said before, not only by my ex-husband, but then a victim of the media and society, basically.
Yeah. Oh my God. On behalf of the country, I'm sorry. It's just, it's so weird. Like up until now, and this is the power of a documentary, we're allowing you to get out there and tell your story. It's all the things you didn't think about beyond like the soundbite of what it is.
That's true.
To be able to stretch this into 4 hours. Back in the day, you know, every studio or whatnot would be like, hey man, 90 minutes, like we got to get out of there. I imagine Amazon is like, go crazy, like make it as long as you want. Multi-parts is good, binge, binge, binge.
It's funny, we, for whatever reason, like 6 is the number, right, that people seem to stick things in. And I don't think that's always a good idea, right? And guess what? I wanted to do 6. And Amazon and the movie gods were like, how about 4? And the second
So you're the idiot.
Yes.
They are the smart ones.
Yes. Filmmakers, you know,
Right. We dream big.
You have to. We need a box to work within.
Right.
But and it is funny because when they were like, "How about 4?" I felt this sense of relief,
Right.
and I was like, "Oh yeah, of course," you know. And within half an hour, moving around, boom, this is how we'll do the 4. And you know, it ended up just being the perfect amount of time. And I've been told the episodes fly by, right?
That's good.
That shouldn't come from me though. But yeah.
When did Jordan Peele get involved?
So early on. So Jordan and I met in 2013. There was a screening of my first documentary at the ArcLight in Hollywood. It's called Lost for Life. It's about juveniles who are serving life without parole.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had mutual people in common. He saw the movie. He was very kind about it, and we just became friends. And, you know, we'd go for like weekly Chinese food in the San Gabriel Valley, and I was talking about my social issue docs that nobody was paying attention to, and I couldn't get into real festivals, but he liked them, right? And he was talking about this horror film he wanted to make. And one day in January 2017, I said, it was en route to, you know, get some Dan Dan noodles. I was like, you're never going to guess who I spoke to today. I spoke to Lorena Bobbitt. And he was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? And I said, whatever you think, it's not that.
Right.
And then I broke it down for him. And then we're literally talking about the month and a half leading up to Get Out being released. And all he wants to talk about is Lorena.
Right.
And it was Get Out opening weekend. And it was that Saturday night. And he just said, he's like, so what's going on with the Lorena project? I said, we're going to try and find a partner, because I'm like a schmuck nobody, right? I was like, we're going to try and find a partner this week. And he's just like, I would love to be that partner. And I was like, of course, you know. And then there
How
was.
tremendous. While his life is about to like blow up and his movies happening, he's still
that
knows
is
quality.
That is him. He's one of those people who he uses those superpowers for good, you know? Yeah.
When can folks watch it?
February 15th, Amazon Prime, all 4 drop. Yep.
Bang, man, that's the time.
Yeah.
Excellent meeting you. Fantastic job. Give it
Thank
up
you.
for the folks from Lorena.